We're on the hour, and I am teachery, Bethany, so shall we just jump right in?
Let's do it.
Okay, I know people are still logging in, so while they do that, I'll take care of a little bit of housekeeping for everybody. Welcome, you are in the right place at the right time. It's a great webinar topic, an important one, and I'm thankful for each of you taking the time to be here and share the conversation. The number one question in any webinar I've ever done is whether the recording will be available, and yes, it certainly will. And we will have links throughout the webinar in the chat to get you to the places that we're looking at. And the chat will also be made available to you. So the recording and the chat with all of the links will be available as part of our follow-up. We have you without video and without audio. So if you have that feeling that I have sometimes when I join a webinar, like, oh, I hope the camera's not on. Don't worry, your camera's not on. We do want to interact with you though. So please do open your chat. Your colleagues have logged in and are active in the chat now, saying hello and noting where they are. So if you'd like to do that too, please join us in chat. We'll have quite a bit of conversation happening in there, running parallel with the webinar content. It's a nice way to share information and suggestions and feedback that you have. It's also the perfect place to drop a question. I'll be happy to field those questions so we can learn more from Bethany today. So do a double check right now and make sure that you're sending to all panelists and all attendees so that the full group can enjoy the conversation. Let's see. All right, so in the chat, I know you've said hello and we know where most people are from. I wondered also if we could do a warm-up chat. I have a question here. It says, please introduce yourself and share what you've been noticing about Holocaust education in your program. I don't know if I should say your school, your classroom, your program, whatever that means to you. What are you noticing? I wonder what inspired you to join today, what kind of experiences you've had, and maybe you could share a little bit in the chat right now with Bethany and with colleagues from across the country and around the globe. What are you noticing about Holocaust education in your program? And while you're sharing responses, I will make a formal welcome. You are in the right place at the right time. We have come to learn about foundational resources for teaching the Holocaust. And as promised, we will get right to the good stuff. I'll introduce myself. I'm Wendy Amato. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for Teaching Channel I Teach and Learner's Edge. My teaching career began in 1991, and I wanted to make sure to say that in my 30 years in education, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum continues to be at the top of my list for its educational mission and impact. So I am personally proud and honored to be a part of this webinar. But you're not here to hear from me. It's my pleasure to introduce Bethany Nagel. You can read her bio snippet here on the screen, but what I want to say to you is the way she summed up her current work at the museum. She said that she oversees all the educator resources. So for that reason, thank you, Bethany, for your work, because the resources of the museum are invaluable. So Bethany Nagel, welcome.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm so excited to be here today to talk to you and all of these educators that are joining us.
We have a great agenda today. We've got specific topics that were promoted as we invited people to join the webinar. We want to talk about guidelines. We want to explore resources, certainly navigate the website. I think having a friend show you through the website always feels good. So Bethany's going to offer that to us. And then she'll share with us, we're going to learn a little bit about the 2021 Belfer National Conference for Educators. So it's quite a lot. I'm looking forward to it. Bethany, I'm going to stop sharing, and I wonder if you can give us a little bit more of an intro about you and help us have some understanding of why you've chosen this for your educator career path.
Absolutely. So I've been with the museum for about 2 years in this role, where I was brought on board to help the museum design a process for creating new resources for educators. We before that had resources created in all these different pockets, but we didn't have one person specifically dedicated to making sure we're filling the gaps that teachers had and listening to their needs and kind of organizing that all in one place and getting all the staff on board. So I've been working on that for about 2 years, and we've churned out a bunch of new lessons and other resources. And it's been really exciting for the museum because it's been a totally new angle, and I'll talk about some of those new lessons here today. I personally was really interested in this just because I've always loved history, and I wanted to find a way to be able to pursue history as a career path. I'm sure we have some history teachers joining us today who know how not only interesting it is, but how valuable it is. And it might seem daunting for students who maybe want to do something with it, but they don't know what. And working in a museum was a great place for that. And I was always very passionate about Holocaust history. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
That's great. I am matching up with a comment that one of our colleagues put in the chat saying, if it weren't for my class, my students would not learn about the Holocaust. And that just sounds like its own tragedy.
Absolutely.
I'm grateful that people are taking on this important content, and I think it's a good place to be. Not everyone gets to have your role at the museum, so we'll do what we can in our classrooms. Bethany, let's start the discussion with some talk about the guidelines that are offered. There really are some best practices for teaching the Holocaust, and I think it would be a wonderful place to sort of set up maybe some boundaries or recommendations for educators.
Absolutely. So the museum created its own guidelines for teaching about the Holocaust, which you can find on our website. And I can show that just a little bit later where you can locate those. And they're all written out with a short description to kind of help you place how you might use that guideline in your classroom. I want to remind everyone that these are just suggested guidelines. Of course, maybe not all of them will be able to apply to your classroom, and we're not saying they're set in stone and the end all be all, but if you're looking for truly some guidance on how to get started or maybe how to approach certain topics with your students, it can be a really great place for you to come and kind of read through them and see where you could implement some of their suggestions into your practice. We also design all of our lessons taking into account the guidelines, making sure it's reinforcing those principles that we stay true to, and not pushing ideas or concepts or pedagogy that kind of turns into a different lane from your teaching. One of the guidelines is translating statistics into people. So, the museum's definition of the Holocaust includes the murder of 6 million Jews and millions of others. And those numbers are really hard to grapple with, especially as a young student. And so our lessons really strive to help add personal stories and individual people to our lessons, whether it's through individual profile cards where students can learn about a specific person, or lessons that focus on a town that maybe you've never heard of. Maybe students have heard of Berlin, Germany, but they haven't heard of that small little town in Poland or Yugoslavia. So making sure that students learn that there was a variety of experiences and that, everyone's experience was different also really helps with those.
The guidelines are helpful. I like that you've added that you are reminding teachers to use their best judgment. They know their students, they know their program, and the guidelines are there to encourage us. I think that to be a safe boundary for everybody, but we do have to consider ourselves as the experts in the classrooms that we serve.
Absolutely. And we recognize that teachers know their students best. And there's just, such a variety of students and learners out there. Like, the same situation isn't going to apply to every classroom. And especially with Holocaust education, some teachers teach about it because they feel it's important, because they're passionate about it, because they want to make sure their students connect with it. Some teachers might teach about it because it's mandated by their state curriculum or their local curriculum, or they're given a certain resource and they have to use it no matter what. That all the ways teachers come into this are different. So we just want to try to help all those different teachers in whatever way we can.
You also said that the education team holds itself to those guidelines in preparing lesson plans and activities for teachers, and there's some reassurance there that we can count on those guidelines informing the other tools that are available.
Absolutely. And if you all come to the Belfer conference this summer, which we hope you do, and we'll talk about later in this program, we reference the guidelines multiple times. There's an entire session on it, and it kind of gets brought up throughout. So you'll get to learn more about that, how they were created and how we all use them, and hope that teachers can find ways to use them.
I've written myself a note to ask a little bit about how the museum organizes its resources. My memory from previous work with the museum was that there used to be a theme, and the resources sort of pointed towards a specific theme, but now the resources are organized on the website in different ways that allow teachers to sort of meet their curriculum where it is, meet their students where they are, and perhaps pair up tools and resources with other things happening in the classroom instead of trying to fit into something different. Can you tell me about that?
Absolutely, and I'm happy to share my screen
Oh
to
yeah,
show
let's take a look.
teachers.
Let's go for it.
Awesome. So let me pull that up for everyone.
This is
So
this is
here,
what I love, Bethany, is I feel like this is the collaboration that we may all be hungry for of these past 14 months, where you're sitting next to a fellow educator and you're sharing the screen to look together at something that can improve our teaching practice. So happy.
absolutely. So I have the homepage pulled up here. This nice image at the top often changes. So if you come to the web page a week from now or a month from now and it looks a little different, you're still in the right place. We just change it up to show you what's new or different topics we're talking about. So if you come over here to what we call the hamburger menu in the top left corner and you click on it, you'll see this whole section called Teach. And most of the stuff we'll be talking about today can be found underneath it. So if you click on it, you can see a variety of options. And if you're really not sure what you're looking for, you can just go ahead and click on Teach. And it'll kind of take you to this basic homepage where all kinds of stuff lives for educators. So there's a couple of different pages I'm going to show you here. The first one will be our Getting Started guide right here at the top, which is actually very new to our website. And if you take a look at it, this is a great place for an educator or school admin to come to if you're really unsure about how to get started teaching about the Holocaust. Maybe you're new, maybe you're looking for some fresh ideas. And we organize our resources here for time constraints about teaching about the Holocaust, as well as if you're teaching history or social studies or English language arts. Now, granted, we have so many more options besides what's on this page, but if you're just kind of looking to start to orient yourself to what we have, if you only have a couple of days to teach, this is a really, really great place for you to get started. But if we go back, we can take a look. We have plenty of other options here. So we have fundamentals for teaching the Holocaust, which kind of gives you a variety of options of things that maybe you're a new teacher and you want to kind of refresh yourself. You see here, we have the guidelines that I was just talking about. So you can click on those and explore the guidelines. You can start to explore a rationale and learning objectives, which we've also kind of started to talk about rationale, and that gets brought up at our summer conference. And then you can see on the right, we have a list of our foundational resources, and you can get to our foundational resources from a variety of places on our website. So if we go back to the Teach page, I also want to point out two more things, our teaching materials by topic page, which is a great place. If you are looking for lesson plans, this is where you want to go because this is where all of our lesson plans are hosted, and they're currently hosted by topic. I should note that we do occasionally work on our website and things change. So this is how it looks right now. In a couple of months, it might look a little different, but that doesn't mean you're not in the right place. So how we have our lessons organized right now, currently we have our foundational lesson plans, which I had just mentioned, how you can access them from various locations. We have topics that explore Americans in the Holocaust. So what was going on in the United States and what Americans were doing at the time. We have a current exhibit in the museum. When the museum reopens in a couple of weeks, people will be able to see the exhibit there, but we also have an online exhibition about Americans and the Holocaust. And this is a great way to connect teaching to the Holocaust in an American history classroom. So, if you're not sure how to tie that in because the Holocaust did not happen on United States soil, there's still ways to talk about it and make it relevant. And we have a lot of resources here that can help you do that. We also know that anti-Semitism and racism are foundational themes when you teach about the Holocaust. So we have a whole page dedicated there. We have resources for if you're using books and literature, whether you're an English language arts or literature teacher, or potentially you're just using a book in your classroom. We encourage you to check out what we have available there. We have resources on Nazism and Jim Crow, trying to make historical connections, and also, once again, talking about what was happening in America at the time, and connecting that with Nazi Germany. We also have our primary sources and the museum's collections page. This really makes a lot of connections to what you would find if you went to the museum collection space or the online collection search. If you're looking for survivor testimony, diary entries, letters, photo analysis, or using historical images, all those types of things can be found there. And our last two themes currently are propaganda, and we're talking about Nazi propaganda and how that was used in the Holocaust, and then the roles of individuals, because as we know, the Holocaust, happened because of the participation of just ordinary people. So that's kind of a lot, but this is where I hope you all are able to go later, and you can kind of explore some of the lessons that we have available. And we are always adding new things. So please, please, please come back and check it out. Even if you used a lesson last year and you have it saved as a PDF, I would recommend you coming to our website, because we're always updating our lessons, whether the museum has new resources or new links or new information. So I hope you're able to, find your way back and you can revisit what you've used previously.
Bethany,
And
Annette in the chat asked about grade recommendations. I know that's an important topic you and I have discussed before, and because the question has come up, I wonder if you could address it.
absolutely. So most of our lessons, as you'll be able to see if you click on one of them, are recommended for grades 7 to 8. And that is because that is what the Holocaust Museum recommends for teaching about the Holocaust, as well as bringing students to the museum to walk through the permanent exhibition. It doesn't mean that you cannot teach about that outside of that age range. If you want to teach about it in, classrooms 5 to 6 or in elementary school, we rely on the teacher to adapt our resources and scale them up or down depending on the needs of your students, no matter what grade level they are. And, if you need some help with that, you can always reach out to museum staff members, and we're happy to help with that.
I can add too that your colleagues are already offering suggestions in the chat as well. Kari or Carrie is making a suggestion for a grade level. There's some comments about what students have taken from some of the lessons that people have already been into some of these lesson plans, and they're giving feedback on it.
Awesome.
Jenna says that the website is amazing, has been using it for several years, talked about Daniel's story. So yes, while there may not be specific grade recommendations in these resources, the community that we're building, even here in the chat, can be instructional and informational in helping everybody to use tools appropriately.
Absolutely. And, we're creating lessons for teachers and students throughout the country. And we want to make sure that we're providing teachers with as much information, no matter what grade level they teach. Or maybe this year they teach 7th grade and next year they teach 4th grade, and the year after, they're teaching 7th grade again. So we just want to make sure we put our stuff out there, and then you can easily adapt it however you see fit.
One of the topics that's related after we talk about grade levels is always a content area. And every content area has a place in this conversation. So don't self-filter. If you teach a content area and you're already telling yourself, well, I'm not really sure, don't self-filter. Come and take a look at the resources. You may be pleasantly surprised.
Yes, we totally recommend that. Maybe you don't teach social studies or English language arts, which are the two we get the most. It doesn't mean we don't want you to use our stuff. And a lot of our resources are truly created as multidisciplinary. And if I can show one more thing on the website, I think that would be useful. We have this special page for online teaching resources, which was created in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's kind of just a mix of things that will help teachers if they're teaching students in a hybrid or virtual setting.
Can you pause and repeat that? Because everyone has had such a year. I want to make sure they understand your team has carefully prepared this site specifically to support distance learning.
Yes, this page specifically. And so Some of our lesson plan PDFs we went through and added modifications to. You can see a list of some of them here. Some of them were also created in a response to teachers reaching out to us and telling us, it's really hard to do this because I'm not here to emotionally support my students. So how can I teach about the Holocaust without it being overwhelming for them? And we created a couple of lessons that focus on personal stories and artifacts that help reinforce how and why the Holocaust happened, and kind of tilt that learning away from dates and facts and names and places that we know sometimes can be hard for students to grasp. So a couple of those listed here. You can see diaries as historical sources. That's one of those lessons we created. Rescue and survival and hiding, and resistance during the Holocaust. Those were specifically created after the pandemic had started. And then we also had learned that we needed to create some digital experiences that students could complete on their own in case teachers needed homework assignments, or they needed to give students separate assignments to go complete. And so we've been working to create online versions of all of our lessons. We currently have 5 available right now, and we're working to create more and should have more up in the fall. And these are experiences that students can complete through a web browser. But if you have one of the learning management systems listed here on the screen, there are files that you can download to actually plug it into your LMS if you're familiar with how to do that.
I just have to voice the thank you that all teachers are feeling in their hearts right now. You're giving me something that's ready for my LMS. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I'll just click on one for everyone to see it.
While we're navigating, I'll note also Jessica made a comment about wishing to assess readiness of students for the topics. And I think that even on this page, the considerations that have been brought into discussion of how to explore this content in a distance learning environment may also be some of the considerations that would help you determine readiness, because you don't want to leave a student struggling with an issue that they are not equipped to cope with.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why we really recommend diving into those artifacts or personal stories. So many of our lessons focus on those or use those types of primary sources, and it can really help the student make a solid connection to the history and feel connected without feeling emotionally overwhelmed. And so this is just a quick look at one of our online lessons that we have. These have only been up for a couple of months. This one here, we want teachers and students to be able to explore the swastika and other Nazi symbols, but it starts out really simple with emojis, something we all probably use every day. There's a lot of fun activities. There's a worksheet that students can use, fun little definition cards. So we hope that this is something that you can use in your classroom and you find really approachable and accessible.
Wow, I think even just getting a peek at this lesson is inspiring.
Yes, we're really proud of them. So if you're using them, please let us know. We want to hear, what's being successful in your classroom.
A specific question asking about Google Classroom.
Are you asking specifically like what we do, or
if the online materials are compatible for Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Classroom?
Sure. So our worksheets are fillable PDFs. So
Perfect.
If you find a way to use that with Google Classroom, we don't share anything in Google Suite for various reasons. But our worksheets are fillable PDFs. If you're having issues with that, you should be able to find a way to contact us on the website, and hopefully we can help you with that. And then those online lessons, all of them are available just to use through a URL. So if you don't have a learning management system or you don't want to figure out how to do that, you can just share it through the web link. That's how I just accessed it to show all of you, and you should have no problem with your students having access to it that way.
Yeah, seeing it and having you navigate live is so reassuring, and especially when you say the website is a living thing. It may look a little different when you come back in, but be assured you're in the right place. There's something nice about knowing that educators are continually looking at what's there. You're probably looking at activity flow through the site and wanting to make sure that people are able to find things. It's really reassuring, really reassuring. You're getting kudos for the emoji lesson plan. I don't know if that was yours or one of your team members, but it sounds like it's a thumbs up all around with the thumbs up emoji.
Awesome. Yeah, everything we do is a team effort. We have a great team of staff that work on the lesson, so I'll be sure to let them know.
I like my organization because we are educators doing things for educators, and you are also, and you can just tell the authenticity of the intentions of purpose in those cases. It's really great.
Absolutely.
As people have the chat open, if you see other suggestions that you would make to share with colleagues, or if you have questions that you'd like for me to relay to Bethany, please don't hesitate. I've got my eye on the chat. Let me shift a little bit. I wanted to ask you another question. You and I have talked previously about how precious it is to hear stories from Holocaust survivors. And I think it would be valuable for us to take a moment and make sure that educators joining us here can learn a little bit of information about the First Persons program. I don't know if that one is getting as much activity as it should, but gosh, what a precious program.
Absolutely. So before the COVID-19 pandemic, First Person was a program that ran in person at the museum from March through August, twice a week. And visitors to the museum would have the ability to come in and listen to a survivor speak for an hour. They were usually interviewed or guided through conversation from a journalist or one of the museum historians and students, but any visitor to the museum could come in and just hear directly from that survivor about their own personal experience. They could ask questions. At the end of the program, they could go up to the survivor and speak to them. I mean, it just was really such a powerful experience. And I had the pleasure years ago when I was an intern in graduate school at the museum of actually working all of those programs. And I loved it so dearly. And this year we figured out how to pivot to bring that experience digitally to everyone, which I think is just amazing. Some of our survivors, our team in survivor affairs at the museum has trained all of our survivors how to use Zoom and troubleshoot. And it has just been amazing to see them adapt. And they are so excited to share their stories with anyone, but especially youth. And the First Person program now is once a month. It airs on a Wednesday at 1 p.m. and it's on the museum's YouTube channel. If you're unable to view it while it's happening, it is recorded and will live there, so you can always come back to it. We had our first one last month in April, and our next episode is actually tomorrow at 1 p.m. And we're really excited about that. And there's also a teaching guide and a student interactive developed. So if you'd like to use it in your classroom, whether when it's live or you come back to it, we have that prepared for you, and hopefully you can find that helpful.
Let me make sure people heard. You have also prepared the teaching guide that goes with this experience. And the 1 o'clock is 1 p.m. Eastern. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, 1 p.m. Eastern.
To have the teaching guide accompanying that program just takes it to the next level. You really are providing the tools that make education meaningful. There's intentionality with it. You all have the experience to understand how to do it right. And then to know that you are informed and structured by the guidelines just gives peace of mind to everybody. I'm grateful.
Well, and Wendy, you can attest to it. There's nothing like hearing from a survivor. I mean, it's so special, whether it's in person, it's a video, it's a recorded program, it doesn't matter. It's just so touching, and not everyone has the ability to see a survivor in person. And so this is kind of that next best thing. It's a way to bring the museum and the survivor into your classroom. And it's free. And there's no registration or anything needed. You can just go to the YouTube channel tomorrow at 1 p.m. and watch, or if you want to come back to it later, you can just go to that YouTube channel and find it.
I'll share, I have had the honor of being with survivors. I've had the honor of participating in special programs with them. I've had the privilege of bringing students to the museum when there have been survivors in the first floor area available to talk to the young people, and those were incredible. I have also shared survivor testimonials, recorded testimonials with students, and they are powerful. So please don't talk yourself out of using a recording. I think that the voice, the the spoken word is more powerful to young people than we realize. And maybe some of the language that the students hear, or accents, or the specifics of the stories, there's going to be so much that's activated in young people's minds with those live, with the spoken word. You've just got to give it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's in the first person program is a back and forth, just like you and I are having, Wendy. So I think it's really engaging for, whether it's a young person or, an adult. It's just really awesome.
Yeah. Well, and with the Holocaust from 1933 to 1945, we are aging up, and makes this all that much more important to capture the stories.
Yeah.
Well, let me pop over to my questions here. Oh, I'm going to zoom out before I jump into a specific question. For a lot of people, maybe we can put our discussion into a larger context and talk a little bit about the museum's mission and purpose. I jumped right in with you asking to take us to the resources and get into the specifics, but let me zoom out and ask if you can set up the larger purpose of the Memorial Museum.
Sure. So, as Wendy said, we are the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, and we are a living memorial to the victims and survivors of the Holocaust. So all the exhibits, the programming, everything that we do is to remember the victims and the survivors of the Holocaust.
And you are federally funded? Or
Yeah. We're a federal institution, and we also receive donated money as well.
Definitely do. And I hope there's a donate link on the web pages as well for people to support the museum and its work. I have some additional comments coming in, specific additional stories people are recommending. If there's a book recommendation that you all want to make to your colleagues, please add that to the chat. People are always appreciating additional suggestions offered to one another. Okay, now I'll jump back into another question here. You shared the resource pivot on the site, providing resources for teachers to teach online and in virtual spaces. You also, the museum made a huge pivot last year with the Belfer conference. And we know we want to invite people to register for that event, but I'd like to invite you first to talk about how this invitation is now so generously available to everyone.
Absolutely. So we've been doing the Belfer Conference for over 20 years at the museum. And before the COVID-19 pandemic, we would have one session for history teachers or social studies teachers for 3 days, and then another session for ELA teachers. And while a lot of those sessions were the same, we would kind of do some differences on the second and third day, so that way teachers could get some specialized training or information or historical content that was relating directly to what they taught. And each session could accommodate between 100, 125 teachers. And that was it. There was nothing more we could do. And last year, when we realized we were going to have to pivot from what we wanted, we knew, let's not cancel it. Let's find a way to reach those teachers who were planning on coming already and more. What can we do? And so we developed a virtual experience, and we used the platform called Whova. It's an app or something you can use in your web browser. It's very easy to navigate, where we're able to launch our session videos, where there's a running chat. There's all kinds of different message boards where museum staff are interacting with participants. Teachers are making connections with teachers regionally, but also all across the country. And last year we were able to reach about 1,000 teachers, which was quite a jump from the original experience. And, it removed all those barriers that made it difficult or impossible for people to come. Travel, family responsibilities at home, work, all those different things that could interfere with it being virtual. Hopefully it allows way more people to come. So that's what we're doing this year again. The conference is free. We really hope you all register. If you have questions about that, there's a way to, contact museum staff. If you're looking at the website, there's an email there. We're doing a couple of different sessions this year, which we haven't done in the past. So if you've never attended Belfer and you're a classroom teacher, you'll register for the first session. if you've attended Belfer in the past, whether it was last year or 20 years ago, we welcome you back to the Belfer Alumni Conference, which we're really excited to have returning educators come. And then if you're an educator, but maybe you're not actually in the classroom, whether you're school administrators, a principal, you design curriculum, whatever the case may be, we have a third conference where you'll be invited to register for that one, and you can make some connections with colleagues who are dealing with some of the same obstacles that you would be.
I love this. I'm going to share screen just so that people can really lock in on the conference options that are available. You've described the three, and they are all, it's clear what you're registering for. Someone in our group attended about 6 years ago. It was neat to see that. And then there have been others who have attended. I'm not sure of the timeline for everyone, but this really has become a long-standing contribution to the education community and is indicative of the Holocaust Memorial Museum's commitment to equipping teachers to do a good job. I'd love to see entire departments and teams join together and attend the conference. I think it would be wonderfully enriching for a program. Instead of being the one attendee and trying to bring things back to your program, my gosh, invite a couple of colleagues to attend with you and think how much more robust your conversations will be afterwards. It could be incredible. And the incredible opportunities for interdisciplinary work that will be so beautifully developed because you've attended the conference together. I think there's just no reason to hold back. You don't have to put in a budget request. You don't have to wait for some approval form for the spend or hope that there will be some monies at the end of the fiscal year. The museum is making this available to everybody, and there are different tiers for it. I met a couple of your educators who may be involved in the conference this year. Can you talk about how these are real teachers who are participating, and what might the experience look and feel like for someone coming to that first level for newbies?
Yeah, sure. So we also have another teacher program at the museum called the Museum Teacher Fellowship, and teachers who have been through Balfour and are more experienced in teaching about Holocaust education have the opportunity to apply for the fellowship. We accept about 15 teachers every year, and before the pandemic, they would come to the museum for a week in the summer and receive additional training and support from other fellows who have gone through the program. And then they would go back to their communities and do workshops and other types of programs. And then the following summer, they would come back and share what they've done and receive a little more training. And then they would have completed their fellowship. And so then they are a fellow. And one of the things that the fellows mainly do is they help with different professional development opportunities, whether it's through the museum or just regionally through their own community. And we always have museum teacher fellows help facilitate Belfer. So if you're attending Belfer in person, you would be split up into classrooms, and you'd have like a homeroom teacher kind of thing, and that would be an actual current classroom teacher, and they would be talking to you and kind of leading a lot of those discussions. And then you'd also get to interact with museum staff such as myself and my colleague Kim, who runs the Belfer conference. But they will still be there virtually this year. They'll be on the chat boards. They'll be helping with some of the sessions we have where we're talking about resources and going over them. So, those experienced teachers will still be there. They will still be available to answer questions. If you want to talk to someone who's currently using something right now, they'll be very accessible. But as far as newbies who are attending, besides our wonderful museum teacher fellows, we have some really exciting opportunities and speakers. If I can talk about those now.
Please do.
So our keynote speaker for all the Belfer conferences is going to be Derek Black, who is a former white nationalist and grew up in a white nationalist family. His father was the creator of Stormtrooper, which some of you may be familiar with as one of the leading communication methods of the white nationalist community. And he's going to speak with us about, anti-racism and anti-Semitism work, and how you can start to tackle those themes in your classroom or when students are bringing things up. And he's just wonderful to listen to. We're really excited that he'll be joining us. And then all teachers will also have the opportunity to hear directly from a Holocaust survivor. This year, we're featuring a man named Ari Kruglansky, and he is a survivor himself and also a social psychologist, and has done a lot of work with neo-Nazi groups and studying the emergence of that. And he's just such a spectacular man, and he'll be sharing his story with us, which we also can't wait to share with all of you. And then on top of that, you'll get to hear from museum staff such as myself talk about all the different resources we have. You'll get to hear from museum historians that are on staff and receive, their historical expertise, which we're really excited to share with you about different topics. And we're going to provide free resources and books for your classroom. So we hope that's an incentive. If nothing else has triggered you to come
when you say free resources and books, everyone's like, oh.
Yes, please come. We'll have things to send to your house, which we're really excited about. And then the other nice little piece of it is Balfour will be able to help potentially make some connections to other Holocaust organizations in your own region. We partner with Holocaust organizations throughout the United States, and Balfour will be able to help facilitate some of those conversations with more regional partners for you if you're far from the museum, but you're looking for potential field trip one day or other PD opportunities and things like that.
I'm going to put a question up in the chat. I always like to hear what educators need, because people like you and people like me are in a position to provide resources. And so just to ask this question and invite people to share what kinds of tools and resources are most valuable to you. And so if you'll put some suggestions in the chat, that will be good information for Bethany to share, and maybe can help even anticipate some of the questions that could come up at the Balfour conference. And so let me know in the chat what kinds of tools and resources are most valuable to you. And I think probably the tools and resources people have used are the ones that are most familiar, so they seem most valuable. But stretch yourself a little bit. Maybe there's a tool or resource that you haven't used yet because you weren't sure that you would get a good one, or that it could be used well, or so this could be a chance for you to express some interest in something that expands your instructional modalities or tools. That's great. I'm always appreciative of things that are ready to share with students. I want a student handout. I want the tool that I can put in their hands, and always grateful for things that help me as an instructor. But I know when I've got both sides, the teacher side and the student side and the resources, I'm at my happiest when I get both of those. So we'll see what comes in the chat there. And then I'll put that slide back up again to remind us of the 3 levels of the conference. I didn't write out all of the possible groupings for that session 3, but could you talk one more time about who may want to be at session 3? And I'm asking you, Bethany, to repeat, because many of the people joining us in the webinar may be just the right folks to send a link to somebody else. And so who do we want at session 3?
Absolutely. So a great way to kind of envision it is if you're a current classroom teacher who's never attended, you just go to Balfour 1. If you've attended Balfour in the past, come to that alumni conference so you can make connections with teachers and staff you may be familiar with. And then if you're someone who's maybe not actively teaching in the physical classroom right now, so whether you're designing curricula, maybe you train teachers, you could be a school administrator, you could be a principal, you could work for your state Department of Education, any of those things that qualify you as an educator, but you're not physically in the classroom currently. We welcome you to come, because we want to just make sure we get these resources out to everyone who needs them. And, the people in those kinds of positions are able to help spread the resources that we have and make those connections for teachers in their own communities.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's really helpful, especially that third one. So if you're not in that third category, please send the link to someone who is in that third category, and just imagine that additional support, that top-down support that you can have and feel, so people can value what you are doing in the classroom. So there's something for everybody there. invite people to take a look. We snuck right up on our 45 minutes. And so I want to pause with a thank you to everybody for joining and learning with you, Bethany. There's information that we shared from our agenda. We know we wanted to look at, I've got to double check my list like a good teacher and double check objectives, guidelines, resources, the website, and Belfer. Valuable conversation with really rich sharing from colleagues in the chat. Bethany Nagel from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, on behalf of educators across the country and around the world, thank you for sharing with us today. I'm grateful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to be here. I hope that the resources we shared will be useful and that you come to Belfer. If you're unable to make the date, please register because you can still access the app in the weeks following, so you'll be able to catch up. So please come, and if you need help, find a way to contact us on the museum website. We are here to help you.
I've registered and I will be attending session 1. I can hardly wait. And so please join me at session 1. If that's the starting point for you, I'll look forward to being your schoolmate this summer. Thank you, everybody.